Namaste, Jai Hind, and good morning. Joining you on this special broadcast because we're breaking format because the government has decided to break format, viewers. They're working through the week, and it's early morning this Saturday that the joint statement has been released. In fact, the Union Minister Piyush Goyal had said, all right, we will release the joint statement soon, and mid-March is when we are going to sign the deal, and there's going to be a formalization of this agreement. But the contours have been set out, and I think the government has shown a little bit of alacrity on announcing the contours and the details of this deal because there was a lot of questions and possible rumor mongering that was going on. And at a critical time ahead of elections in West Bengal, ahead of elections in Tamil Nadu, and also later on elections in Kerala and Punjab, largely agrarian states, the government could not afford too much. Assam, of course, going to polls. The government could not afford any of rumors or misinformation leaking through into the farmers. And that's perhaps the reason why the details have been very clearly put out. This entire sold out Bharat sovereignty to the US, this charge laid by the opposition, the attempt is to clearly negate that, fight that, and beat that down, and also come out very clearly and own the narrative that the interest of Bharat's farmers has been protected, the interest of Bharat's core industries has been protected, but an opportunity has been opened up for Bharat to really, really amp up its manufacturing, amp up its exports, not just with the US, but with the European Union and so many other nations. This is the 10th trade deal, and the contours are still being firmed up. But core industries, core agricultural sectors, dairy sectors have been protected, and Bharat has been able to stave off huge pressure coming from the US on maize, corn, and also on cheese, etc., and key dairy products. Lakshman is with us from CNBC this morning. Zaka Jacob with us. Zaka, more importantly, the 500, we said we'll discuss the $500 billion commitment. And the sectors have been very clearly mentioned there. There is no agricultural sector in that. There is no dairy sector in that. There are no core interest sectors in that. Perhaps there are those sectors where Bharat will need to depend on the US, like energy, coking coal, aircraft parts, etc.
Absolutely. And also, for the first time, it clarifies that this 500 billion will be over a period of 5 years. So effectively, you're looking at $100 billion. And the word that's been used is intends to buy. India intends to buy. It doesn't say India will buy or has committed to buy, intends to buy. So which means, yes, I mean, it'll have to be a commercial negotiation. And as you rightly said, it's been outlined what are the items that India could potentially buy from the US, including, US energy, aircraft and aircraft parts. Look, America, Boeing is one of the largest manufacturers of aircraft in the world and aircraft parts in the world. And India civil aviation space. I'm coming to you live from an airport. It's a Saturday morning. It's really busy here. India and Indigo have placed massive orders over the next 10, 20 years or so. So the point being that, look, I think the concerns were, like I said, twofold. One is this, where are we going to buy 500 billion from the US? Now we know it's over a period of 5 years, and it's an intention. It's not, something that's cast in stone. The second is also on agriculture, where it's been clearly outlined, and I think it's very important, Anand, that our viewers know this. All of this talk around, rice and wheat and maize and corn, the staple crops that Indian farmers grow, none of that is part of this deal. What is part of this deal is very specific red sorghum that's meant for animal feed, dry distilled grain, which I suppose might be used in spirit making and so on. Then there is some processed and raw fruits. And then there are tree nuts, which would include, your almond nuts, walnuts, etc. These are not staple crops that Indian farmers grow. Indian farming will not be terribly affected if we import a few pecan nuts from America or a few walnuts from America. I think these are the four items that have been agreed to in the deal. The others, the most important crops that our farmers grow, rice, wheat, maize, corn, etc., are completely out of the purview of this deal. And I think that is important. It's hugely important to underline because this had become a huge political point as well in Parliament. The opposition was raising that. And the reason why it became such a back and forth politically was because no one seemed to have the clarity. Now we have the clarity. Now we know exactly that these are the items that are part of the deal, and these are the items that are protected and that are out of the deal.
Now, and in fact, the American influx of these tree nuts, etc., pecan nuts, pistachio, walnuts, etc., may just drive the price of the products down because the market then suddenly becomes competitive. But we've got Shweta Punj and Ambassador Prabhu Dayal also joining us. But Lakshman, आप कुछ कह रहे थे ये $500 billion deal में और कहाँ पर इम्पोर्टेंट है? और जैसे जाका ने कहा कि इंटेंट टू एंड विल कमिट, कि हम खरीदेंगे या हम खरीदने की कोशिश करेंगे, दोनों में बहुत फर्क है।
बिल्कुल, हम खरीदने की कोशिश करेंगे, हम कोई कमिटमेंट नहीं कर रहे हैं कि 5 साल में हम 500 बिलियन करेंगे ही करेंगे, क्योंकि अब हमारा मुश्किल से ट्रेड 50 बिलियन का होता है। 50 बिलियन को 500 बिलियन 10 टाइम्स बढ़ाना एक चैलेंजिंग होता है, इसीलिए इंटेंट टू वर्ड का इस्तेमाल किया गया। एक वर्ड जो प्रोडक्ट है, जो आप लोगों ने जिक्र किया है, एनर्जी प्रोडक्ट, एयरक्राफ्ट, ये सब तो है, लेकिन एक प्रोडक्ट जिसको हम लोग मिस कर रहे हैं वो काफ़ी इंपॉर्टेंट है, वो है आपको टेक्नोलॉजी प्रोडक्ट। जो टेक्नोलॉजी प्रोडक्ट इसलिए इंपॉर्टेंट है चूंकि वहाँ से कहा गया है ज्वाइंट स्टेटमेंट में कि ग्राफिक्स प्रोसेसिंग यूनिट, जीपीयू, डेटा सेंटर में इस्तेमाल होने वाले प्रोडक्ट को हम वहां से लाएंगे। इसलिए इंपॉर्टेंट है कि 2030 तक $200 बिलियन का इन्वेस्टमेंट डेटा सेंटर में इंडिया में कमिट किया गया है। डेटा सेंटर बनेंगे कैसे, इक्विपमेंट कहां से आएंगे? तो इक्विपमेंट यूएस से आएंगे, उस $500 बिलियन का एक इंपॉर्टेंट पार्ट है, ये काफी महत्वपूर्ण है, तो इसको आपको ध्यान में देना होगा। और एक चीज और कि जो जेनरिक फार्मा, उस पर भी अमेरिका ने ड्यूटी लगाने का ऐलान किया था 5 सितंबर 25 को, उसको भी हटाने की बात यहां पर की गई है। नॉन टैरिफ बैरियर एक बहुत बड़ा कंसर्न था। नॉन टैरिफ बैरियर मतलब ड्यूटी के अलावा जो बाकी कंडीशन हम लोग लगा देते हैं, लाइसेंस के कंडीशन, कोटा के कंडीशन, वो सारे धीरे चलकर हम लोग हटाएंगे, तो ये भी एक डील का एक इंपॉर्टेंट पार्ट है।
जी, Shweta Punj and Ambassador Prabhu Dayal with us. Shweta Punj, what is the one factor that is important and perhaps that will quell all the politics that's being brewed? The opposition is already asking for a joint statement in Parliament. There are others who are saying, look at the map the US Trade Secretaries used. They finally got the map of Bharat right. But what are you focusing on?
Right, Anand. I think it's the big economic reset, for India as an economy, because we have, as Lakshman also pointed out, we've really brought down our non-tariff barriers, which is good for the economy. We did it because of the various FTAs that India has signed, so we were pushed into it in a way. So I think this 1 year of economic friction that India has seen with the United States has really worked for India in opening up the Indian economy in a good way. Having said that, we have continued to protect our politically sensitive sectors such as agriculture and dairy. And we have managed to get lower tariffs or no tariffs. We'll have more clarity on that, on a lot of labor intensive sectors, which are very, very important, such as leather, textiles, gems and jewelry. These are very important sectors. They employ a lot of people. They were under a lot of stress. So overarchingly speaking, we've to give an objective view on the FTA. This took time, but the contours of the deal, the agreement that are emerging, are a positive for India and even for the United States. It's actually a win-win for both countries, because the US needs us too. We might be a smaller trading partner for them, but they need us as well. Also, the bit on the technology transfers, right? We really want to up our innovation game. That's one of the reasons why we've seen such an outflow of FII and FPI money in the last year or so, because they've gone again to China, that has invested a lot in these future focused sectors, and our investments in those areas have been somewhat lagging. So we've seen that focus coming through in this budget, and the fact that we have this agreement with the United States will help us upscale and upskill our people, upskill our technologies faster.
Yeah, Money Control has just put this out as I go to Ambassador Prabhu Dayal. Safeguards retained for key agri, dairy items, wheat, rice, maize, soy, poultry, milk, cheese, ethanol, tobacco, vegetables, meat, etc. Major push in tech trade, higher cooperation in GPUs and data center related goods. Now, that's also high investment. We are not, perhaps somewhere these investment commitments, purchase commitments are also for technology, businesses, industries for the future. We're looking at semiconductor foundries. We're also looking at opening up and setting up huge data centers. So there will be huge purchases of tech equipment and also critical minerals, Ambassador Prabhu Dayal. So is this pact silica? Are we now formally getting into being a pact part of it?
We are getting into a broader pact with the United States, and this will strengthen the bilateral relationship. It was a matter of great concern that the bilateral relationship had been subjected to such severe tensions because of trade-related matters. Now, the joint statement will ease tensions, and I think the Commerce Minister had mentioned that by around the middle of March, we should have the trade deal in place. So that will certainly help to put back the whole relationship back on track. And this is very important from the point of view of India, and also of the United States, because we are key partners for each other. The derailment of the relationship was not helping us at all. It was serving the interest of a whole host of other nations who are not well disposed to us. Now, with the tariffs being cut down, our exporters will be very relieved, and their products will be very competitive in the US market. Of course, we have had to accommodate US concerns, but not in regard to agriculture. This is very important. And the Commerce Minister, in his statement 2 days ago on 5th of February, had very categorically said that staple items like rice, wheat, corn, and soya will be protected. They will not be given, the United States will not be given concessions in regard to these staple items. And that is what the joint statement has also mentioned. Basically, the items which are included in terms of agriculture are those which don't affect us very directly. And they are either for animal feed or items like nuts, etc., fruit, which in any case, we do import, and the imports of which will not affect our farmers.
Right, and those who like their tipple or bourbon and rye, wine and spirits, they're going to bring down the duties. But is that going to be a big number, or is that going to perhaps, get the entire Indian distillery, outfit, get them a little worried? Because Zaka, Indian wines and spirits were also making their foray globally. They're also getting access to global markets, but there are huge non-tariff barriers that have been placed to protect that industry, also automotives. So where do you think the challenge will be for Indian manufacturers? Because the first line that it says is that this is going to create a huge opportunity for Indian exporters, MSMEs, and farmers. How's that going to happen?
For exporters, as Shweta was saying, some of our very labor-intensive sectors like textiles, apparel, gems and jewelry, leather and footwear were getting beat under this 50% tariff. I mean, at 50%, your goods are basically uncompetitive. No matter how low your production cost is, how low your labor cost is, at 50% tariff, you simply can't compete. So India was being outcompeted by the likes of Vietnam and Bangladesh and Sri Lanka in the case of textiles. So now at 18%, at least you're back in the game. You're competitive. That is as far as textiles, leather, etc. is concerned. I also believe in the statement that Mr. Goyal has put out, Mr. Piyush Goyal has put out. It says that gems and jewelry, the US is committed to going down to zero duties. Again, if that is true, if it is zero tariffs, much of India, the diamond polishing and the diamond cutting industry that sells from Surat, they sell to Europe, either to Belgium or to other countries in Europe, and from there it goes to the US. So again, if this has been brought down to zero, then you can directly export to the United States. So I think that is, again, a very important thing. Again, we're awaiting clarification on that. But I think what this also signals, aside of the details that have been put out by the joint statement, is that the bilateral relationship, which, let's face it, had faced a deep rupture in the last 1 year, particularly in the last 6 months with these tariffs. India had sort of hinged its strategic outlook to the region, to the world for the last 25 years. It was hinged on the Indo-US strategic partnership. That strategic partnership faced a major rupture in the last 6 months. I think now we can put that relationship back on track because, as Ambassador Prabhu said, trade was the thing that was derailing the relationship. Now trade seems to be back on track. The other factors, the other factors guiding the relationship can also seemingly be back on track. So I'll be interested in knowing, in terms of defense purchases, in terms of strategic and security outlook towards the Indo-Pacific. Remember, Donald Trump was supposed to come here for the Quad last year. India is the host of the Quad. Will that commitment now come back on the track as well? And this joint statement, if it's going to be signed by both sides, will the Prime Minister travel to the United States in March? I think that's, again, a question. Or will Donald Trump come here because he was anyway due to come here for the Quad Summit, which did not happen? So a lot of things will get clarified, I think, in the next few weeks. The good news is we now have text. Yeah.
where Prime Minister Narendra Modi has just landed. He's just actually he's leaving for Kuala Lumpur, and we saw Piyush Goyal there present just as the joint statement's been given. I think that's Piyush Goyal early morning. I think they've discussed the contours of the joint statement, and then Prime Minister Narendra Modi is just on his way. He's embarking to Kuala Lumpur. So when he lands, what happens there, we'll have to see. The visuals there, the person seeing him off, is that Union Commerce Minister? Yeah, it is Piyush Goyal. So he's the one. So clearly, they've worked out the contours of this joint statement through the night, that is US daytime, and then early this Saturday morning, this joint statement's been released. Zaka was talking about the security aspect, the cooperation aspect, and Quad coming back. Ambassador Prabhu, it's not for nothing. They say that pictures speak 1,000 words. The map of Bharat, that's going to upset the Pakistanis a lot. It's going to upset a lot of people because finally they've got the map right. And does that indicate a big switch, a big turn in the way the West is now going to perceive Bharat and the greater cooperation in terms of regional security and alignment?
Well, the West was already taking India
Ambassador
very
Prabhu,
seriously. India was considered a very important partner for many countries because of geopolitical reasons. India matters, India counts. And therefore, a whole host of countries, including the famous five, which are New Zealand, Australia, the European Union, UK, and of course, some of the Gulf countries, Oman, UAE, we were all working towards strengthening the partnership, and we had arrived at trade deals. So India had begun to matter in a manner that it had never mattered earlier. And this fact was very clear to everyone, including the United States. And certainly, the US looks at India as an important strategic partner also. And if you have trade tensions, how can strategic ties be strengthened? But nonetheless, we have to work towards strengthening the relationship. Now, of course, India has agreed to totally eliminate tariffs on some US items. We have to strive towards getting the US to also totally eliminate tariffs. 18% should not be good enough. 18% is good when you look at the tariffs which were prevailing, 50%. But if we are giving them zero tariffs, then we should negotiate over a period of time and get the tariffs down on Indian products also to zero. So, in other words, there is still a lot of work to be done.
There is a lot of work to be done. Bodhisattva Ganguly from Money Control also joining us. Lakshman coming to you for the data-wise breakup in a bit. But Bodhi, good morning. Thank you for your time. Your thoughts, the highlights. Have Bharat's interests been protected, or as the opposition is alleging, has its sovereignty been sold off to the Americans?
No, I think that I don't think its sovereignty has been sold off to the Americans. I think more or less we have protected our interest. It is on expected lines in the sense that the zero tariffs which the US has secured are largely for industrial goods, which was in fact, by the way, widely known for many months. And the agricultural imports which they're talking about are, if you are kind of, if I may put it this way, like peripheral agricultural commodities. It's not rice and wheat, which are our core agricultural commodities and which millions of Indian farmers are employed. So I think our interests have been protected. I think, as one of your panelists mentioned, what we need to do going forward is to get a lower tariff from the US. I mean, this 18% needs to come down to 15%, which is the tariff rate which the EU gets. Right, so the US offered a number of tariff rates. So 18% is among the lowest, but the lowest is 10%, which the UK has got, and 15%, which the EU has got. So despite all the fighting and the verbal, fighting between the US and the EU and so on various other matters, so India needs, I think, to negotiate it down in 6 months when this thing will be kind of reviewed, and when we actually sign a full-scale bilateral trade agreement. I think we need to negotiate to bring it down to 15%. I don't think the US is offering zero to anybody. On a broad, by the way, as I think, as is well known, a lot of Indian exports were already at zero, which are the iPhone and pharma things. What the other things that we need to do, iPhone farmers, about 50% of India's exports were already at zero, even before this bilateral deal. The other thing which we need to do is to, again, just preliminary thoughts, is that certain items like steel and aluminium, are subject to a 25% tariff because that's under a separate section.
Right.
And those need to be brought down to 18%. That's what is known, these are what are known as Section 232 tariffs. Right. So those need to be brought down
Right.
in the first instance to 18 and possibly to 15. That's what we should look at. But I think our interests have been protected. I don't see any, huge concessions in agriculture. There are a lot of non-tariff barriers
Right.
which India does have, and which we have agreed to
Right.
resolve. But those are medical devices, ICT products. Then I think a review about what kind of standards will be accepted within 6 months, and it talks about non-tariff barriers on agricultural imports. That
Right.
is correct, but I think these would be
Well,
but these would not be the
well,
core areas. I think that
no,
it's
even
really
as we
animal
speak,
feed.
Bodhi,
Yes,
even as we speak, I'm going to check with the team to check this out. Just Sergio Gore has just put out an executive order coming in from the desk of the US president. So, from the
right,
desk
right.
of the president, he's just put out this entire executive order, which talks about the revision of tariffs. He's saying Executive Order 14066 of March 8, 2022, prohibiting certain imports and new investments with respect to continued Russian Federation efforts to undermine sovereignty, expanded the scope. And then he's come down and he said, I've received additional information and recommendations from senior officials regarding India's efforts to address the national emergency described in the executive order. Specifically, India is committed to stop directly or indirectly importing Russian Federation oil, has represented that it will purchase US states energy products and from United States, and has recently committed to a framework with the US to expand defense cooperation over the next 10 years. After considering the information and recommendations these officials have provided to me, among other things, I have determined that India has taken a significant step to address the national emergency and to align sufficiently with the US on national security, foreign policy, and economic matters. Accordingly, I have determined to eliminate the additional ad valorem rate of duty imposed on import of articles of India pursuant to Executive Order 14329. In my judgment, this modification is necessary and appropriate to deal with national emergency declared in Executive Order 14066. So the tariff rates have come down. So the executive order that announces the slashing of tariff rates with immediate effect from 50% to 18%. This is that executive order that Sergio Gore just has tweeted. So that's big. Tariff modifications, Section 2, he's saying, effective with respect to goods entered for consumption or withdrawn from the warehouse for consumption on or after 12:01 a.m. Eastern Standard Time from February 7, 2026. Products of India imported into the US shall no longer be subject to additional ad valorem rate of duty of 25% imposed pursuant to Executive Order 14329. Accordingly, effective 12:01 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, February 7, 2026, headings 9903.01.84 through --9903.01.89 and subdivision US note to subchapter 3 of chapter 9. Okay, that's technical. Harmonized tariff schedule of the United States are hereby terminated. To the extent that implementation of this order requires a refund of duties collected, refund shall be processed pursuant to applicable law and standard of procedures of US Customs and Border Protection for refunds. So this is the huge announcement that's come in. He's saying that the additional ad valorem has come back. We come back with the details of this executive order that Sergio Gore has tweeted.